hoofstock birds, right whales, red wolves, and lemurs, and is now a professor at NC State, teaching about many animal-related topics, including the human-animal relationship. Dr. Campbell has her bachelor's from Virginia Commonwealth University and her master's and PhD from NC State. And we're so happy to have Dr. Campbell with us today. So thanks for being here. A quick reminder that over 200 of AV Geeks compilation videos are available for checkout from the libraries, but you can also visit avgeeks.com or search for AV Geeks in YouTube or at archive.org to see more of what you're going to see today. Now I will hand things over to Skip to kick us off.
Thank you, Jason. Wow, Zoom's tools are getting better and better. I can very easily navigate from one to another and the sound and all that stuff. So we did an animal-related film series earlier in the semester, and so this was a little bit of a challenge, but Jenny was up for it. So I picked two films about pets. One of them made in 1953 and one of them made in 1969. And as our expert Jenny can attest, they're very different in theme in what they talk about. This first film is a cornet film. It is got some voiceover narration that kind of talks about city pets and the responsibility and the fun associated with this. And this is pets that you would raise in your apartment or your home, mostly, which is different than pets that you might have a yard for. So it's going to be, everything is going to be kind of scaled down a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started with that. We'll watch City Pets, and then Jenny will talk about some of the things that are related to her studies and some of the things that kind of were compelling for her and interesting for her. So here we go, watching City Pets.
This story takes place in a city. It begins in this apartment building. It begins at one of the windows, but we'll have to look closer. Oh, this is Spot. Can you guess why she's at the window? Well, when she isn't busy scratching, she's watching for Jimmy to come home. Spot is lonely. She wants to play. She's thirsty, too, and hungry. But her food is in the refrigerator, and her water comes from here. Spot really needs Jimmy, doesn't she? So she just waits. Is that Jimmy way down there? Is it Spot? Is it Jimmy? Yes, that's who it is. Spot is happy now. She listens for Jimmy to come up the stairs. Not so loud, Spot. We don't want to bother the neighbors. Spot knows how to show Jimmy that she's hungry. And Jimmy knows what to do about that. Jimmy also knows that keeping Spot's water bowl filled is another regular job that goes with having a pet. Yes, Spot really needs Jimmy, doesn't she? She needs Jimmy to take her outside to play, too. Spot knows they're going to the park, and she's in a hurry. But Jimmy holds tightly to the leash. Do you know why? That's the building where Bertha Hoffman lives. Jimmy sees her at the window with her pets. Spot sees them too. Do you know what Bertha's pets are called? They're parakeets. Aren't they cute? Of course, Bertha has to take care of them. She has to clean their cage and put fresh paper in the bottom. She sees that they have plenty of good bird seed to eat and fresh water to drink. The parakeets need this care because they are tame birds. Wild birds make their own nests and find their own food. But Bertha likes taking care of her pets, and she likes playing with them. Of course, Spot would rather hurry on to the park. At the corner, Jimmy makes Spot stop, and he holds the leash tightly as they cross. Spot doesn't understand about cars and traffic, so Jimmy is careful to help. Now we're coming to the pet shop. Let's all play a game and see if we know the different kinds of pets. Can you see inside the window? What kind of pets are these? Do you think Spot wants to make friends? Do you think this puppy would like to go home with Jimmy and Spot? Oh, look here. What kind of pets are these? Do you know anyone who has a monkey as a pet? What's this? It's a hamster. It's going fast, but it isn't going far, is it? These birds look something like Bertha's parakeets, but these are canaries. Do you know this bird? It's a parrot. Don't you suppose its name is Polly? This is another kind of parrot. Of course, you know what these are. Would you like to have a turtle as a pet? There are many kinds of fish people keep as pets. These are angelfish. The owner of the shop has a big job taking care of all the pets. Right now, he's feeding the goldfish, and they're hungry. Now the owner has a customer. It's Mike, a friend of Jimmy's. He's buying a bag of sand he needs for his kitten. We'll see Mike's kitten later. But now Jimmy and Spot have arrived at the park. Parks are for playing so Spot can run free. And look at her run. Who can run faster, Jimmy or Spot? Exercise is good for Spot. She can't run and play shut up in an apartment. Jimmy has grown very fond of Spot in the 2 months he has had her. And you know that Spot is fond of Jimmy for playing with her and taking such good care of her. They're going to have many more good times together as they are growing up. Come on, Spot, come on. Uh-oh. Can Spot jump over? No, she's trying to go through. Well, now, what's a little puppy supposed to do? Now, what's this? There. Now it's time to start back home. On the way home, they pass by Mike's house. And there's Mike with his kitten. Do you know about kittens and how to take care of them? Can you tell about it? Jimmy thinks the kitten is cute. What will Spot think of it? Do you think a kitten and a puppy could have fun playing together? Could you make up a story about it? Well, it's time for Mike to feed his kitten. And it's time for Jimmy and Spot to be getting home. Here's the pet shop again. We saw many kinds of pets here, didn't we? How many can you remember? Here's the building where Bertha lives. Do you remember what she does to take care of her parakeets? Of course you remember the things Jimmy does for Spot. Now, wouldn't you like to tell the story about Spot? Or a story about another pet that lives in a city?
So, Jenny, what can you tell us about this film that resonates with you?
So,
Oh, hold on, let me mute myself.
Jenny, what?
All right, go for it.
Well, it's really kind of a fascinating film. I'd never seen anything like it before, but clearly it was an effort to kind of teach kids about responsible pet ownership in the 50s. And I guess the thing that sticks with me the most is the monkeys. It's really interesting to me that the monkeys in the pet store were considered so commonplace and not a surprise to be there. So that's one of the things. And then the turtles. I mean, turtles were so big for, through the 40s and the 50s as a really popular pet. And then they kind of disappeared from the landscape in the 70s. And that's in part because of the salmonella risk that they pose. And so they basically made it against the law to sell turtles that are less than 4 inches in length. And so they kind of disappeared. And I remember them when I was a kid. I remember really, really wanting one of those little baby turtles and one of those little plastic containers with the like fake palm tree and stuff that you could get as your turtle's habitat. So, and then
Go ahead.
the only other thing I want to say is the lack of mentioning that, animals urinate and defecate, and that's part of what you need to deal with as a responsible pet owner.
And the fact that they get sick and die.
Yeah, that's right. They really don't address that because, this is a puppy. So this is a new animal and a very young animal, just like the kitten. And it's like, how would the video have gone if it was a dog that was 12 or 13 and, had health issues? Would not have been as fun.
No. And what's interesting is, so I don't have these films handy to show, but I have a film called Gordon's Goldfish. And it's basically about this kid who helps his uncle take care of a goldfish while his uncle's away, and the goldfish dies. And then the kid's like, I don't know what to do. And, the uncle shows up and is like, yeah, it happens. We'll just buy another one. And I'll buy you one too. So, and I have another film that basically uses a litter of kittens or a litter of puppies being born as an excuse to talk to kids begin to talk to them about sex education.
Right.
So in a way, it's almost like, are pets being used as a way to teach responsibility and to kind of teach some of these life lessons?
I think so. And I think that that's actually particularly here in the US, that's sort of how people view their pets even now. You have children and then you like, oh, let's get a pet so we can teach our kid responsibility. It's a really common sort of attitude to have. And with the pandemic right now, everybody, in fact, some folks I've talked to today have acquired pandemic pets. And at the same time, all of the here in the Triangle, all of the animal trainers are completely booked up because nobody knows how to manage their pets. Because, the word pet itself is just an interesting thing to think about, because pet is an animal you own for pleasure, right? You have this animal and it's just there for pleasure. But there's a lot of stuff that's not that pleasurable about having animals that we often forget about. And so just the term pet alone compared to, say, the term companion animal, which is actually what a lot of folks kind of want us to start calling them, because pet implies something you can throw away. Like you can just say, yeah, I'll go get another goldfish, like you said. But companion animal really kind of ups the ante as far as our responsibility with them. And so one of the things you're seeing is a trend towards calling them companion animal rather than just pet, something that you can, discard at will.
Yeah, I guess, so my wife and I have a cat, and we have spent an inordinate amount of time with that cat. And so at some point when we start transitioning back to going back to work or going back to school, our pets could potentially suffer because they're not getting the attention.
Right. A lot of people are talking about what's going to happen in particular with the dogs and the separation anxiety that they're going to experience, especially if you got the dog during the pandemic and the set point is you're always there. So there's going to be a lot of people trying to deal with animals that are suddenly freaked out that they're not staying at home all the time. The interesting thing about cats, though, is if you talk to vets anecdotally, they'll tell you that they've seen more cats with urinary tract infections because the cats are more stressed out that their people are around all the time. So
that's fascinating. Wow. Using pets' health as a barometer to how we are as a society is really fascinating. So you touched upon it with the turtles, and you were very surprised about the monkeys. So was there a time that either a state or a local or a federal government started passing laws against different types of pets?
Oh, for sure. Definitely with respect to the turtles. So the turtles became a salmonella risk and there was a real concern. And so they were banned. So you can't find them anymore. What's interesting is we still have plenty of places in the United States, well, I guess Louisiana, that farm these turtles, but then they sell them all overseas. They don't keep them here in the US anymore. So once they said it's got to be a turtle bigger than 4 inches, it kind of shut down that entire little turtles for little kids phenomenon that was so popular for a long time. Right. Another thing that I think of so the Animal Welfare Act actually was a federal act in 1966 that came about because a person's dog ran away and was picked up by a dog dealer. And then the animal was sold to a biomedical research facility. And the dog ended up being used for experimentation and then dying. And that's actually kind of why we have the Animal Welfare Act. That's actually what sort of its birth was in this particular event that took place, because they had a friend who was a congressman who then, introduced a bill in Congress to say, hey, you shouldn't be able to grab somebody's dog, say that it's, at large, and then sell it like that. And so when I see this film and then the other film too, I think about the whole idea of lost animals and how much more common it was back then to have an animal be loose or on the loose. And in fact, that scene where the little boy lets the dog go at the park, that doesn't happen. I mean, we have leash-free dog parks, but there's rules about them. And you certainly never see anybody just pop their dog's leash off and let them run like you do in that film.
So something that has resonated with me is the fact that how our pets that we love and love us back generally, the impact that they have on the environment and our ecologies, our local ecologies. I guess I read something about cats and birds, local birds.
Right. So first off, this film has a really similar name to a chapter in a book that I have my students read in my human animal interactions class that's actually called Pets in the City. But it's not as fun and cute as watching this because it basically talks about all the different diseases that, dog feces in particular and cat feces can transmit. And, you read the chapter and you wonder why we keep pets at all. But yeah, so that is a big concern. And I'm also, I'm thinking about, well, sounds kind of gross, but we really, really obsess over dog feces way more than we probably should. In my neighborhood in particular, it comes up on the listserv. It pretty cycles through the listserv every couple of months. And there's this big debate about, can you put your bags of poo in my trash can? That kind of thing. But it really runs to an extreme when you live in a fancy luxury apartment in, say, Manhattan. And when you move in and you have a pet, you actually have to submit samples of your animal's feces to the apartment complex so that they can genetically analyze any, accidental or illegal emissions that they find and figure out who was the guilty party. So.
Wow. Yeah. And so I guess another thing that I was thinking about, well, because I used to have iguanas. And iguanas do not really belong in North Carolina. And unfortunately, we lost iguanas because of that. But I was thinking about how there's a bunch of iguanas in Florida, and they really shouldn't be there. They're invasive. And the fact when it had that cold snap and how all these iguanas were falling out of trees. I mean, is that a problem to where people get a pet and then just kind of let it go, and then our local ecologies have to kind of figure out how to reconcile this?
That's really interesting to think about. So the whole reason we have dog catchers and we have animal control departments is because people aren't always responsible with their animals. And that includes dogs, cats, tigers, whatever people happen to keep in their homes. And so a way to think about that is that this new and really, really popular reptile trade has caused a sort of a whole new problem, especially for those animal control people that know nothing about how to manage a python or a venomous snake or whatever they happen to find at large, just like, in the past, it would have at most been a dog or a cat. But when you think about Florida, it is the only state where the temperature and the climate is such that some of these tropical snakes and reptiles, other reptiles, are going to be able to take hold. There is some concern that with climate change, they might start to migrate north, but a lot of folks say there's kind of a barrier right there in North Florida into Georgia. And a lot of the ones that have established their own populations, like the iguanas, there's Burmese pythons, anacondas have been found. There are monitor lizards. There was actually a viral video last week of a monitor lizard that was scrambling through a convenience store and like knocking stuff off the shelves. So yeah, that's a big concern, but it goes back to that same issue of responsible ownership of the animals that you bring into your home.
And I guess the whole Tiger King miniseries on Netflix was about really having animals that they really shouldn't be owning.
Well, you're right. And so there are less than 4,000 tigers in the wild. And they're scattered across a couple countries in Asia. There are probably anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 tigers here in the United States, some of which, like a very small percentage of which, are in conservation focused zoos, but most of them are in Tiger King type situations. And so it's a real problem. And it's actually something that the federal government is actively trying to figure out how to manage. And they keep attempting to pass legislation at the federal level that will control big cat in particular ownership, but other dangerous animals as well. But it just keeps getting stymied because there are folks that lobby so heavily for it that the bills kind of stall. But the irony is Tiger King actually gave some folks a little bit more momentum, and that's actually moving through Congress now. And so hopefully fairly soon there will be much, sort of much more rigorous restrictions on owning those types of animals. And then something that I particularly don't like is cub petting operations. And this law would definitely put an end to the cub petting industry, which to me would be a wonderful thing.
Excellent. Excellent. So we're going to shift gears here. And I appreciate Jenny for letting me bend her arm in showing this next film, because it has something to do with pets, but it goes in a different direction. But I think there's definitely some things as far as responsibility, as far as, what we do as children, interacting with pets and being irresponsible. I have yet to see a kid that's not irresponsible with a pet. I mean, that's just part of the deal. And the parents are just like, well, you need to be responsible. You need to be responsible. And the kid's just flailing. But so this next film is 1969, and it's Lost Puppy, and it was made by Churchill Films. It was actually filmed by Caleb Deschanel, who is the famous Hollywood cinematographer. And it's pretty amazing. And it basically shows a girl who loses her puppy and makes worse and worse and worse decisions to get that dog back. And so we'll watch that and we'll come back.
Get it wet.
Lauren? Lauren, is that you? You left the gate open again this morning and the dog got out. I found him in the park. If you want to keep that dog, you're going to have to remember to close the gate. Stay in the house till I come down. And stay out of the cookies. what? I'm leaving now. Remember, I want you to stay right around the house while I'm gone. And if you need anything, you go next door to Mrs. Wright. She knows you're here. Lisa! I'm in a hurry. Talk to you later. Hi, Melissa. What's that? It's a dog. Where'd you find it? Under a tree. Let me try. Hey. It doesn't work very well. I know. Can you play? No. Queso got out this morning. How? I left the gate open. Well, can we play here? Sure, I guess so. Okay. Oh, no! I left the gate open. Oh, Queso got it again. Queso! Here, Queso! 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 Are you in there? Here, Queso! Is he there? No. I think he went to the park. I'm gonna go get his food. I think you should wait until your mother comes back. You better not go. I'm going. You want to come? No, I have to stay home. You could get run over. You do what you want, but I think you should stay here. Come on, where I went. Queso! Queso! Sir? I've just seen a dog.
What kind of dog?
Well, he's brown and white, and he has a short
tail.
No, I haven't seen a dog like him this afternoon. How'd you lose the dog?
The gate got open. For the birds,
Yeah.
do they like them?
Watch this.
Let me try. I better go now.
Wait a minute. Would you like me help you find him?
Well,
You could take my car.
I don't think so. I'm not allowed to ride with strangers.
It'd be a lot easier to find him with the car.
No, thank you. Hey, so. Hey, so. I'm angry at you. Found him. I still think you shouldn't have gone. Your mother's calling you.
So Jenny, you felt like this was something that you identified with. I mean, not just the haircut, but
No, I mean, well, to be honest about the haircut, I also remember those dress collars, those white dress collars. Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I think about is that when I was young, well, back to the whole idea of animals being allowed to roam, kids were allowed to roam much more so than they are today, right? Because of, again, the stranger danger issue and all that. And so her wandering around, I wandered around a lot. And so that's actually a big part of it too. Also, sort of her cruelty with the dog at first, she's kind of cruel to the dog in the beginning. And then you see at the end, she's clearly remorseful and so happy that she found the dog. But you kind of know that it's, for the dog at least, it's going to kind of go back and forth, living with her.
yeah. And so lost pets. I mean, you talked about on your neighborhood mailing list how people are talking about dog poop. I mean, on mine, it's the number of pets that are lost and the number of pets that are found. That is like the main topic by far.
Right. Yeah. I'd actually say listservs in general, there's so much stuff going on about animals on listservs all the time. And that's the only reason I pay any attention to mine. But there's always the copperhead season. So where everybody's talking about copperheads and people are arguing about whether they're a scourge on the earth or something we should try to live with. And then there's the whole conversation about all the other snakes and then the only good snake is a dead snake. So that's common on the listserv. But what I've been noticing a lot lately, and this is kind of troubling, is because we have a lot of coyotes in the triangle, people that have cats that go outside, there's a lot of missing cats. And whenever I see those missing cat posts, I want to reach up and type on my computer, like, what about coyotes? But I don't. So
right. You don't want to be the person who brings it up, the
right.
bad news.
Yeah.
And so coyotes didn't used to be a problem in.
Right. So coyotes have been moving across North Carolina and they've made it all the way to the coast. That's the case up and down the eastern seaboard. And in fact, one of my favorite coyote moments was when the coyotes actually went through New York City so that they could get over to Long Island. And there were coyotes that were hanging out in Central Park just briefly before they kind of was like, yeah, this is not a good place for us. And so they migrated on to the island. But yeah, and they're definitely present. And there's folks at NC State that study the coyote population densities and sort of map them. And you can actually call the museum downtown and well, I don't know if they're doing it right now, but you could get a camera trap set up in your yard so that you could actually collect data for them on what might be moving through your property. So we've actually done that here. We've put one in our yard and we see a lot of bunnies, and I never realized how high bunnies will hop. And I don't know if it's because they want to get their photo taken, but we have a lot of bunnies and we have white-tailed deer for sure. And then the coyotes and the foxes.
Yep.
But it's interesting. People can really obsess over stuff. We had a fox in the neighborhood a couple weeks back that had mange, and the whole listserv was just a fire with how do we treat this fox with mange? And if we call animal control, will they kill the fox? And it was really kind of interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. And when I had a cat that was an indoor outdoor cat, the number of animals that cat brought in that get caught. I mean, we're talking about, let's see, voles, moles, mice, rats, baby bunnies, a squirrel, a baby opossum, a snake, and a bat.
Yeah. So it's a huge problem. And it goes kind of back to that whole pets, having an animal for pleasure. It's taking a long time for people to really realize the implications, the ecological implications of having these animals and allowing them to interact with the rest of the landscape. And again, that's another thing that you can do through North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences is you can participate in the cat tracker project. So you can get a little harness with a GPS put on your cat and they can track where your cat goes. And then you can go online and you can look at how your cat compares to others. And if you look at them, one of the things I'm really fascinated about is these indoor outdoor cats don't want to go in the woods. So they're going all over the neighborhood, but they're sticking to the yards and around the houses. But if there's a plot of woods, they stay out of that. And I think that's kind of cool. But yeah, so they're decimating songbird populations. They're having a huge impact on other small vertebrates. But on the flip side, kitties are revered and so many people love them. So it's this weird dichotomy of recognizing they're a problem, but also considering them, part of our special club.
Right. Right. And, we talked about that little legislation that then comes into play. What is the tipping point? Like, why does something become a law or be introduced as a law? Is it because somebody lost their beloved pet, or is it because something pretty significant is happening with animals? Like, what was the fish Dora from Finding Nemo?
Oh yeah, Dory.
Like the clownfish.
Well, he was a clownfish.
Okay, he was a clownfish.
He was like an angelfish, I think.
Right, and those are kind of showing up places that they're not supposed to be showing up.
Yeah.
And also, somebody in the notes comments was basically saying like, is this still a problem during? We just had Easter where people are buying bunnies and they're buying dyed baby chicks.
It still happens. It's kind of interesting to me. This stuff still happens. You still sometimes see those little African clawed frogs that are in those little plastic containers that people will buy. And, they'll see them at the counter by the register and just go, oh, that sounds like a cool thing to have. Or, go to a pet store and look at all the betta fish and all the betta fish in those little pint-sized salad containers. It's like, and it's interesting to think about. It's like a betta fish. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those Japanese fighting,
Yes.
fighting fish.
I actually have a film that shows them fighting. So,
well, they're amazing, and they're actually, one of the physiologically, they are better at obtaining oxygen from their environment than a lot of other fish. They have these really cool physiologic adaptations, and yet we kind of confine them to these little pint-sized containers that get stacked and sold at the pet store. So.
I mean, so somebody else kind of posted something about news items about, somebody getting eaten by their snake or by their pet sharks. I mean, the albino alligators in the sewers of New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And there was the guy that in Manhattan that had the full grown tiger. He'd had it in his apartment for years. And what's interesting about these events is, when things go wrong or things go bad or people decide, okay, I can't do this anymore, then who's the person or the persons that have to go in and clean up the mess, like capture the tiger or go in and dismantle the venomous snake collection that somebody has.
And chances are they will get destroyed. They'll get killed. It sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We're just not equipped for that. There's a reason we're not allowed to have giant tigers in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's true.
So other points about owning a pet. Like, I mean, you're not the person who says all about pets, but are there things to consider? Should a parent consider? Because it's usually bad parent behavior that ends up with a kid having a pet they can't handle. So what would you recommend that a parent do?
That's an interesting question. I think that parents, again, just don't treat an animal like an object and instead find out what actually goes into owning a crested gecko or a bearded dragon or a puppy, or, how often does that fish tank need to be cleaned in order for it to be healthy for the fish? So it's just about knowing that stuff. And then I'll be honest, if you choose to do the pet thing before your child is actually old enough to be fully responsible, you need to just accept you're the one that's going to be responsible and know that, right? I mean, I got kittens for my son, and I cleaned the litter box for 3 years until he finally was able to take on that responsibility on his own.
Right. And it was natural because he saw you doing it. So it seems like that's part of the family routine, and he's contributing to the family routine.
Right.
As opposed to having a family where there's no pets. Suddenly this pet appears, and now there's all these weird rituals that a kid is expected to do that they've never seen before.
Right. So on back to the bunnies, I will say my son and I volunteer at the Durham County Animal Shelter. We live up in Durham, and we take care of we work in the medical pavilion on Sunday mornings. And on Easter Sunday, we were in there, and there were 5 bunnies, 3 guinea pigs, 12 hamsters, 2 rats. And what troubles me about these smaller pocket pets is I think people think they're going to be easier to take care of, right? And they're like, oh, we're not ready for a dog or a cat, but hey, maybe we could try a rabbit or a hamster. And then when that goes wrong, then they just, again, discard them at the shelter. So, and they're not animals that people think about very much in that regard, but it's always, every Sunday I go in and I'm always surprised at how many new ones have accumulated since the last week.
What is probably the strangest animal that you've seen at the shelter?
At the shelter?
Yeah.
This isn't a strange animal, but it was weird that it was there. One time we walk in on Sunday. There was a pigeon. There was just a pigeon in one of the cages, and there was no explanation as to why there was a pigeon there. So we made sure it had some water and some food and left it alone.
Was it supposedly domesticated? You have no idea.
I don't know if it was a wild pigeon that someone had found injured. Sometimes when things come in on Saturday, they just get parked there, and then Monday they'll take care of it. But so I'm not really sure. But yeah, so I'm not sure why there was a pigeon there. But also just the hamsters, 12 hamsters. Clearly somebody didn't realize they had a male female pair, and then there were 12.
I have a friend who had a cautionary tale. She bought a little potbelly pig in a parking lot when she was in college, and she thought it was really cute, but it wasn't a little potbelly pig. And so it ended up with her family. They lived in like suburban Dallas, Texas, and I actually visited this giant pig, like a full-size pig, had little tiny tusks. And was like a family pet. Was basically they called Mr. Buta, which was they were of Asian descent, and Buta I think is Japanese for pig. And it had a little hat and it had a little handkerchief. And supposedly a neighbor called and said, like, look, called animal control and said, look, there's somebody raising livestock.
Oh yeah.
In city limits. So somebody from the city came and knocked on the door, and Mr. Buta showed up wearing the little handkerchief and everything, and they're like, "Yeah, all right, this is not being raised for food. This is obviously a pet."
Yeah.
So that was definitely a situation where it's like, "Oh, that's cute, and it'll stay cute," and it did not.
Well, that in particular. So there's this thing. I don't know if you've heard of the phenomenon of Repticon. Have you heard of Repticon?
No.
They come to the Triangle twice a year now, and it's basically these folks that are wholesale reptile suppliers and other exotic animal suppliers. They come and they're at the fairgrounds, and it's a big event. So Repticons all weekend long, and folks go not just to maybe buy something, but to just look at all the critters. And a lot of times I think people buy stuff at Repticon that they have absolutely no idea how to manage or take care for. But it's also really fascinating. So if you ever want to see a pretty interesting subculture, go to Repticon.
I went to something similar to that at the fairgrounds, and when I was fostering iguanas, and we were with the iguana rescue people, and showing off iguanas, and I had just sustained a pretty horrible injury where my pinky was almost bit off by an iguana. And so I was basically showing as a cautionary tale, saying like, look, these are the real deal, and they have teeth and they will bite you if you are not careful. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually one of the number one things people always want to know about an animal is, will it bite? And I'm always like, well, does it have teeth and a mouth?
Yeah. Can it fit part of your body into its
Right,
mouth?
right.
And yes, it will bite you.
Yep. Well, I just wanted to go back to the film for a minute.
Mhm.
I just was really struck by, I'm glad you kind of recommended that film, because it was really beautiful in an eerie, creepy way. And it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you captured it. I showed it during a show called Free Range Kids, and it has that kind of feel, and it reminded me of that time in the '70s when I would ride my bike everywhere, and do it for 8 hours, and you made mistakes and you did things that you probably weren't supposed to do that could have put you in trouble, but you survived somehow, and yeah, that film captures that for me. Definitely.
Yeah.
And there's another one in that series called The Bike, where kids steal a bike and then they also have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Okay.
But Jenny, thank you so much for joining us and for watching the films and talking about them.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. And Jason has reappeared.
Hello. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. And thank you, Skip. Again, I don't know how I think I get to say this every year. I can't believe that we are done with another semester of this. So Skip, once again, I really hope you consider doing this again with us next year. I see a thumbs up. That's great. That's why I love Zoom. Well, thank you both. And just remember, to everybody watching, visit avgeeks.com for more of this. If you are an NC State community member and you feel safe coming to the libraries, come on in and check out some DVDs, watch them at home while you're still working there, or use the internet as you have been, as you're doing right now, and experience AV Geeks online too. We do love buying them and having them in our permanent collection. Again, this is our last show of the semester, so we will be back next year because Skip just gave us the thumbs up. And in my notes here, I have a kind of choose your own adventure moment. What if Skip says no? I've never had to go to that page.
No.
So keep an eye out as we unveil our schedule coming up. Until then, you can watch previous AV Geeks at the Library shows through the library's website, which is lib.ncsu.edu. So yeah, thanks again, everybody.